Hey folks, my name is Jessica Mashkovich and I am the host of One Take with Jess. My guest today is Gary Garland. He is an attorney, certified elder law attorney, I should say, and estate planner. And we just talked about the fact that you do holistic financial planning, which makes it sound like it's full of fiber and granola.
Well, full of
Welcome.
something, but thank you.
What is it full of? Why is it holistic?
We preach and practice the four pillars of planning. So that's legal, tax, financial, and health. And we feel like with any other roof, if your pillars aren't supported, then any part of it can collapse.
Oh, so that's the holistic approach.
That's the holistic approach.
And yeah, not a lot of fiber or granola in that one, but it certainly sounds stable enough.
We try everything you need, nothing that you don't.
Well, Gary is not only, sorry, one second. The dog is making a little noise. Gary, you're not only a friend, you actually took care of our will. We drew up our will with you a number of years ago. So that got me thinking that I would love to chat with you, and maybe people can learn from what we did together and maybe do some planning of their own with the pandemic and people losing their lives left and right, or just their entire financial situation being thrown in a tizzy. This is something that you kind of want to step back and plan a little for those moments where maybe haven't been too predictable at this point.
Yeah, we do estate planning and elder law. The two are interrelated, and in some aspects, if you were older, what we did for you might have been called elder law, or you could have been older, but if you have more money, then maybe you're just eccentric, and if you have less money, then you're a little crazy. So if you have more money, we might call it estate planning, and with a little less money, we might call it elder law. But either way, the idea is how do we help families through perhaps three different phases in their lives: wealth accumulation, to wealth preservation, to wealth transfer. So as you're younger, you're accumulating, and perhaps the highest priority is who will take care of my kids if something happens to us? That's guardianship. When you're a senior citizen, you're not as worried about taking care of the kids, although you may still have to. But at that point, when the end is closer than the beginning, you may be looking about efficient wealth transfers, or you may be looking at what do we do in case we're sick? And Medicare is senior citizen health insurance, but it will not cover long-term care expenses, and that can wipe out your estate. So that's part of where you need to be, careful. So for
Right.
different families, different places. And then the last thing, and I'll actually let you, I'll come up for air and let you speak for a change, is when is the best time to plan? Or maybe this is how you were going to wrap it up. But there's an ancient proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. So for example, with elder law and Medicaid, and people know about a 5-year look back period for Medicaid, the best time would be 5 years ago, and the next best time is today.
Yes. And what you're referring to is if you do have to go into an assisted living or a nursing home, they do a 5-year look back to check at all of your financials and see if you had money, where you had money. And then they go based on that 5 years ago plan, because you think you might be sly by transferring all the money to your grandchildren and your children and all that. And, that's only 30 days before you were going to step foot in that assisted living or nursing home. And they're like, nope, we got you. We're looking back 5 years.
Right. Although I spoke with a family today who's been with us for almost 2 years, and part of the plan is we have to wait to the 2-year mark, which will be in March, and then we're going to gift, let's call it $150,000 on the spot. Then we will apply for Medicaid, and we will have a penalty, but we've done the computations where we come out ahead with the penalty. So, it's not beating the system; it's working with the rules that the system has.
Right. If that is a point that people are at, certainly, where they think that they might be within a window of 5 to 7 years of needing a nursing home or some kind of, type of that care, they should be reaching out to someone like you, if not you, someone like you, to really get the ins and outs of what can be done. Because you're right, it's not only a 5-year look back. There are creative ways of going through whatever it is you need to go through, but you have to pull someone in. Now, pulling someone in, people would think, okay, that's going to cost me a ton of dough.
So we go with a flat fee basis, and whatever it is, it's expensive and it hurts. But generally, depending upon circumstances, if you come to me, God forbid, grandma's having a problem and you didn't do any planning. And by the way, for good luck, she's being released from the hospital into rehab, which is generally in a nursing home, and then she can't go back home. And grandma, and we didn't talk about this, so I'm making it up. Grandma has $200,000, and that nursing home is going to charge 15,000 a month. So at this point, not that I charge 50 grand, but if you see that 200,000 going out the door and we can save you 40%, 50% of it, more or less or something like that, I think the fee becomes less of an issue and more of the value of what you're getting for it. So
Right. People who have fallen victim to COVID or have passed. I mean, the numbers are staggering, and it's of all ages. The elderly population was certainly hit hard, but even people that were younger have been hit hard. And I wonder if like your business has completely increased. Are people more aware that they need to get their finances in order? They need to get their last will and testament. They need to make sure that they have medical proxies that are in a file that have been like, certified. What's been happening on your end? Are people really kind of aware that they need to be doing this stuff?
I don't want to sound chauvinistic and say you're cute. Um, are people being more proactive because of what's going on? And I would say people are people. So I haven't gone back to the gym yet because they're not charging my account, at least not that I'm aware of. And the minute they start charging my account and I can't furlough it any longer, I guess I'll be going back to the gym.
I don't think you
So
will. Will you?
if they're charging me, I'm going.
Okay.
Uh, right. I just went back to Pilates last week as proof. So because they started charging me again. So in March, we saw a spike. People were the procrastinators realized they couldn't put it off anymore, and I had many families calling me saying they've been putting it off for years. April, I had to keep checking that the phone was still connected. Thank goodness it was, but April it quieted down, and I have a marketer who felt that people were paralyzed and just in a funk and unable to decide what to do. Then let's say May, until recently we were busy again, and we see spikes in periods that are a little busier, a little less. We are seeing some reduction in business in that folks are afraid to have their parents go into facilities. They're afraid that it's a death trap. And in some ways they may be right, in some ways maybe not so. I see the sun, I'm trying to do that. So we're seeing different reactions as far as how serious to take COVID. I find that I porpoise or I waffle a little bit. I'm usually a scaredy cat, and then at times we're a little more lax about it. And the death figures, you listen to the radio and I'm hearing that it's a hoax and a this and a that. And yet I had a family where they lost five family members from COVID. You take it pretty seriously when you have personal knowledge of it. And then you hear about friends who had it and they had a cold for a week or they didn't know they had it. And it's like, what's the reality? The reality is, I think it's Russian roulette with germs. And I'm concerned I get it and I don't make it out. And I've never been worried about the flu. I've had the flu, it knocks you out, you get past it, and the flu kills people. I was never worried about dying from the flu. I'm very concerned about dying from this thing. And I think it's just perhaps luck we didn't have it. We thought my daughter had it in January. We took a cruise and she had what apparently the COVID symptoms, but we just don't know. And we're not willing to bet on that. So I think it's a very dangerous time. I think people don't know what to do or how to approach it. I think they're stir crazy, and I think people are crazy in general. That's the retail public, but
But you don't think people are coming out of the woodwork and saying, okay, well, you know what, now it's upon us and we have enough information and business is happening kind of as usual. Let's get on the financial planning side of things. Or, we own our own business. Let's see how this business gets divided. If God forbid, the husband of the family gets it or the wife of the family gets it, what happens to the family pet? Who gets the dog?
I'll 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 sum it up. I have a longer story, but for the sake of making it more brief, I'll just spend an hour. So, real fast, a fella is getting his car fixed. He asks the old timer rocking on the porch, drinking his lemonade, "Can I use your phone?" Lets him use it. The dog is on the porch. Every once in a while, goes, "Arr, arr." And finally, the fellow says to the owner, the master, What's with the dog?" And he goes, "Well, he's sitting on a nail." He goes, "Arr." He goes, "Well, why doesn't he get up?" And the farmer says, "Doesn't hurt that much." So the
Mm,
answer to you is, when someone reaches a catharsis or a pressure point, they will call, and they generally will not call before. So that can include someone with special needs children. They don't necessarily get a wake up call that COVID is out there. They get a wake up call that the child is turning 18 and something is going to happen, or the child just inherited money, or there's a reason. I'm not getting calls like, "I'm afraid my mother will get COVID." I'm getting calls like, "My mother broke her hip and she's got to come back home or to the hospital, the nursing home. What do we do?" So
I see.
for
So
us, it's
people are
very
not
much
planners. They're not prophylactic planners. They are just response based.
generally, and I think there's an adage: people will run away from pain more than they will seek pleasure. People will deal with the pain quicker than they will take away the future pain,
Hmm.
right? So the
Got
future
it.
pain is, if I don't take care of it now, I'm gonna have a problem later. I mean, we do get proactive people, but I would say I would not be able to articulate that we're getting people more proactive now than pre-COVID. And in
Huh.
fact, I'd say it's a little bit reversed. You would think otherwise, and maybe you're a
You
little more
would. I mean,
together.
that's really what prompted me to want to get you on, that people are
Yeah,
probably thinking, what can I do to plan better? But not
thinking
so.
isn't doing.
Yeah, wow.
They they may think, "What can I do to plan better?" And then they'll watch Queen's Gambit and still not do anything.
I really liked Queen's Gambit. It got a little slow in the middle, but then it had a definitely good ending.
So yeah, so it's a matter of being out there, top of mind awareness, and trying to educate and educating to motivate. So I can tell you all day long about why a will is important. And first of all, I appreciate that you got from us. And there's just so many times I can tell somebody the same will, and you may be thinking you didn't get a good value because you didn't use it. But similarly
Knock
with
on
life
wood.
insurance, I haven't flown since March. Last March, I came in from San Diego just as the first cases were hitting San Diego. I'm like, eek. But every time, and it's still, well, I haven't been on a plane since March, but before then, I would think about my life insurance before the plane would take off. And it's not like it was a whole 1 hour, dialogue to myself, but I just think about it. I'm in the seat, buckling up, getting my headphones on to watch a movie or take a nap, think about the life insurance. I don't like paying for it, and I'll never get to see it, but I like having it there for the family. Right. And
Yes.
then I just move on with my day, and the plane goes down, be a lousy flight, but at least the family's taken care of. So there
Right.
are things that do need to be done. And I can't think of anything less fun than talking about death, except maybe going to the dentist or picking up dry cleaning. But, if you
Well,
don't do it, you don't have teeth.
let's talk about the will part of things and life insurance
Sure.
tagged onto that. Because what people should be thinking about if they were to be thinking about a will is what? It depends what stage of life you're in, I'm sure.
What do you have? What's important to you? Who's important to you? And how do you want them to get it? So if you have 3 kids and you have $300,000 and you're married, you might say everything to my spouse, then the rest to the 3 kids. Okay, but what about the older one who graduated top of their class in med school? They're earning 500,000 a year or 1 million a year versus the younger one who meant well, pretty good artist, just can't make a living. So is equal fair, and is fair equal? And that's rhetorical. The other thing is, what about different 3 kids that you have? I think you have 9 kids, so I can do 3 examples. So you have another set of 3 kids. Don't tell Vlad. And on this set, you gave one of them 50,000 more as a down payment for the house, and one you gave 50,000 to start a business, and the third one you didn't give anything. So now, do you divide by 3 on death, or do you offset amounts you gave? How about the one who you loaned money to who gave you back some and not the rest? Or how about you have 3 kids and you think you should go a third across the board, but you don't have a good relationship with one of them? Or maybe you haven't seen your grandchildren in 4 years and they're holding hostage, or you don't like your son-in-law, your daughter-in-law, your dog-in-law, whoever it is. So again, equal isn't always fair, fair isn't always equal. Or what if on the face you want to look like you're being equal, but you really don't want to be? You want to backdoor some to one of the kids. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And the children have no entitlement, although they think they do. The only one who has an entitlement, absent a prenup, is a spouse, and they're in for 1/3. You can leave them more, you can't leave them less. And if you do,
Is
they can
that a
sue
New
as an omitted
Jersey?
spouse.
Is that a New
That's
Jersey
generally
law?
that's generally across the country, but it's definitely New Jersey.
Okay. We're having a little
Right.
bit of disruption in the video. There, it went back again.
Sure.
It's generally across the country, meaning all states have that rule, or is it a state by state thing? Because
I'm only licensed in New York and New Jersey.
uh-huh.
My understanding is in, I would say in all states, it is my belief a spouse is entitled to, let's call it about 1/3. Then in
Okay.
New Jersey, it's called the augmented estate. So a third of what? And what if I have $1 million today? What if I had $2 million and I gave 1 million to my girlfriend and then I leave nothing to my wife? Does she have a claim against the 1 million I gave to my 3 kids or the 2 million that I had a month before I died?
Hmm.
So it's there's different rules, different nuances in each state, right? So we have 50 states, as last I counted, full faith and credit in all 50. So if I have a will done in any of the states that say I have 3 kids, a third to each, my opinion is that's going to be good in all 50 states. In New York, I can't have a trust go more than say 100 years. In New Jersey, I can have it go in perpetuity, and in Nevada, I can have it go 360 years, not 365, but 360. That's what the statutes are. So there's different nuances. So that's my comfort level. But who are your beneficiaries? And by the way, if your spouse predeceases you, so you're alone, you have 3 kids, you can give them all. You can give them nothing. You can give it to the Hare Krishnas or whatever charity you want, as long as you know what you're doing. The kids may sue and challenge and so forth, but they have no entitlement, although they think they do.
So if you, as the husband or whatever, we'll call it the husband, die,
Well, I'm not the wife.
die, and then there's 300,000 that gets divvied up, everything goes to the wife, and then
If I leave that way,
it's her discretion to divide the 300,000 amongst the kids, or is that part, like, does she have to execute on your words if she's the one that's the beneficiary?
all right, so let's back it up for a minute. So now I have, let's talk about $300,000. Do I have it or do we have it? And how is it held? So is it in a joint bank account? Do I have 300,000 in my IRA? Do I have 300,000 in a checking account? Do I have no money, but I have a $300,000 life insurance policy? So I can't control where my wife's money goes. So if I have a $300,000 bank account and she has a separate $300,000 bank account, my will controls my money. It does not control hers. However, if she predeceases me, and if everything was left to me, I would have gotten her 300. So in my example, now I have 600 if I'm a single guy based on this fact pattern, right? But I drop dead and we have 300, let's say we have no cash and we have 300,000 equity in the house. And my will says, I don't like her. I'm leaving it to my 3 kids, who I like my wife better than my 3 kids, by the way. I have daughters. It's understandable. So part of it is if I want to leave 300 to my 3 kids out of the equity in the house, but the house is jointly owned, it goes to the survivor. I have nothing to leave my kids. It all goes to the survivor, right? My will
Right.
says my wife, the nasty one, she's actually a good one. She made me breakfast today. So my wife gets nothing and I leave it all to my daughters. That's what the will says in my hypothetical example, which I would never do because it's poorly worded and written. But the reality is by joint ownership, she's getting the house that has 300,000 equity and she decides to live in the house and not give the kids anything.
Hmm.
Later on, she passes. What happens with this 300 equity? Maybe it grew to 350. Maybe she mortgaged it out. Maybe she sold the house. Maybe she married Pedro, the pool boy. He gets the money. Maybe she says, I don't like one of the kids. I'm giving it to 2 of them. So it's her choice. If she remarries and doesn't do a prenup, doesn't execute a prenup, she remarries and she has 300 equity and leaves it all to the kids. New hubby can come in and grow for 100 grand. So she's
Right,
the
because
new
he's now
hubby,
getting the third no matter what.
right? Spousal elective share.
So once you're gone and she has whatever the assets are and the will's been executed, that's it. There's no turning back to say, well, dad promised us, X number of dollars. It's like that will has been read and is already in the fire.
And then there's lawsuits across the board. And the question is, if I promised the kids, 300 grand, but I left 1 million to the wife, do the kids want to fight for 300 grand now and say goodbye to 1 million later? They probably don't want to rock the boat.
Hmm.
The other hand, I leave the kids the lion's share. I work out and I leave my wife the 1/3. So I leave the kids the 2/3 and they got the lion's share and she had nothing but debt. maybe they walk away. It depends on the relationship. Maybe she goes after them for more money and says, I need it. And they say, sorry, kiddo, this is what dad gave me. And by the way, what if they want to give her more money, but while we're at it, she's got a new hip that doesn't work too well. They see the nursing home on the horizon. They start to give her money. It's going right to the nursing home.
Right.
So you got to look at that as well. So we combine estate planning and elder law. And for times with elder law, we use estate planning. So I leave money to, you want to leave money to your kids, and you say, I have 3 kids, 300,000, 100 each, and you want to be even. And there's no prior gifts, there's no debts, it's just across the board. That part's easy. The next question is, how about the velocity of the distributions? So we have one.
Hold on one sec. Sorry, Gary.
All right.
One sec. They always get very excited when you mention velocity of distributions. It's like the trigger word for the dogs.
All right. So we have velocity of distribution. So I have 3 kids, and one of them is a spender. So maybe I want to give 100 each. One of them, I'm going to slow it down. One of them, I can give the money in one shot. And even then, I'd be worried about future divorce, 55% divorce rate. So maybe I give it to one of them or 3 of them in one shot if I choose to do that, but in a way that's asset protected. So they can be in charge of their own trusts. And
So,
they can
wait, step back for 1 second, because when you distribute money, what you just mentioned, the 55% divorce rate, when you distribute money, if they're not married yet, that becomes an inheritance or something that they have to themselves. The future spouse is not entitled to it because it was prior to the divorce, correct? Is that why you mentioned that?
Is it segregated?
What?
So all right, Vlad's gone, you're around, and you leave your kids because you're gone. All right. Or you give a gift. Give your kids a gift. So you give them 100,000 each because your pockets are too full. And they have 100,000 each they put into their brokerage account. And they marry Pookie or Honey or whoever they marry, and they take that account and make it a joint account. They just lost half their inheritance.
Right.
Okay. They keep it segregated. Now we have something else to talk about, but yet during a divorce, conversations can come up like, okay, the 100,000 you were left, we get that was an inheritance, but it was a stock account and you manipulated it during the marriage and it grew 50,000. And by the way, you couldn't have done that if the spouse wasn't home taking care of the kids. They can still make a play for appreciation. So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, if we do it in a trust format, it doesn't even belong to your kids, let alone a future ex-spouse. So we do it in a trust format where your child can perhaps be in charge of the trust, but not have titled ownership. Well, now I don't want bad karma, but they hit somebody with their car, or they owe American Express, or they have a bad business deal. Their own personal stuff is up for grabs. The stuff that's inside their trust is still safe. And a trust, it's a contract, it's an agreement. We illustrate in the office that a trust is a bucket, and it can hold stocks, bonds, real estate, cash.
Okay, so you've mentioned a lot, and I hope people are following, because these scenarios just point out how nuanced all of these types of things can be, and how important it is to lay things out as much as possible, and maybe not download a form from the internet, like here's my last will and testament, and just fill it out with who gets the kids and who gets the dogs. There's a lot more, especially if you have a lot in assets, if you have a business, if you have stocks, bonds, retirement funds, you're gonna want to parse it out in the way that you were talking about with all those scenarios. But you just led into the idea of a trust. A trust, I don't know why every single person does not have a trust, and you're going to answer that in 1 second. But there's a revocable trust and then an irrevocable trust. What's the difference between the two? And then you can answer why every single person does not have a trust.
The difference is IR. 2 letters.
Irrevocable.
So, right. So if you envision a bucket on a revocable or revocable trust, tomato or tomato, on a revocable trust, you're holding on to your own bucket and you can do what you want. And on an irrevocable trust, we get that bucket as far away from you as we can get it. And there's different tax structuring. There's different things that you can do. I don't want to belabor it, but there's also about 65 different types of trusts. So let's go through them. One, there's not. So there's about 65 different types of trusts, and there's different characteristics. But for our purposes, the 2 that I talk about are revocable and irrevocable. or revocable and irrevocable. Revocable and irrevocable. So on a revocable living trust, it used to be in New
Wait,
Jersey,
what
there
did you
was an
just,
estate.
was it the revocable or the
I'm
irrevocable
sorry,
that
I'm from Brooklyn and I mumbled.
was it?
So on a revocable living trust, RLT, okay, that is your alter ego to a super will, and you have control over it. And the reason not everybody does it, they don't want to spend, they don't have some of the understanding when you try to explain it. They go, it's too complicated, you're padding the bill, whatever it is. But the other thing is you really need to restructure the assets to make it work right. Work right. So if I have an IRA, my IRA has a named beneficiary, right? Kind of like I was saying with the joint account or the deed to the house. So if my IRA says it pays to my wife, but in the will or my trust, the IRA says it pays to my kids, where do you think it goes?
Why should it say two different things? It
It
probably
shouldn't,
goes to
but
your kids.
right, except the opposite.
Oh,
So it never hits the trust in my example because by operation of law, that IRA said pay to my wife.
oh, it
So
should
it
say
never,
pay to the trust.
well, no, that's bad too. So the answer is the living trust should not control the IRA. The living trust should control things that we can't otherwise control well. So if we have an IRA or, well, for life insurance, there are life insurance trusts. But for the IRA, that passes by beneficiary designation. Okay, just trust me on this. So if I have a trust, which is a bucket, and I have a bank account, and I don't put that account in the trust does not control it. Okay?
How do you
The
put
trust
it
is a
in the
nice,
trust?
you change the ownership of the bank account to the name of the trust. And if
Okay.
it's an irrevocable trust with a different tax ID number, that's what you do. So
Did
if
you
I
just
have a
say
broke,
irrevocable now?
what's that?
Did you just go back to irrevocable? You're still in,
I may have mumbled that, yeah, but don't get bogged down on that. What I want to convey is we have a bucket. A trust is a contract or an agreement, but visualize it as a bucket. Am I holding on to the bucket? If I am, it's probably my social security number. If I'm not holding on to the bucket, it could be my social security number or it could be a tax ID number on it.
okay.
Okay. So a life insurance trust will usually be irrevocable to get that life insurance out of my estate for estate tax purposes and for asset protection. If the life insurance is in my estate, even if I'm not worried about estate taxes, but I'm killed in an accident where I caused it and the thing pays $1 million, now the family of who I killed can go after this $1 million. On the other hand, if it's in an irrevocable life insurance trust, it's out of my estate and it can't be used to satisfy that claim. Well, technically, you could use it if you chose to. You probably wouldn't choose to.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't want to belabor it, but there's reasons for revocable, reasons for irrevocable. And the revocable is a little more complex than just a will plan. It's generally a few dollars more, and there's more overhead involved to get it set up properly.
But is
So
there
a
more
will,
protection for you? Like, can you, if nursing homes are doing the look back and you've already set up a trust over 5 years ago, is there, are they going to see the bucket that you're holding or are they going to see the bucket that's farther away from you?
we have to make it away from you because if it's revocable or revocable and you can reach into that bucket, you never started your 5 years and you can reach in and pay your medical bills. So it's malpractice to sell to sell a revocable trust for Medicaid purposes. It's malpractice.
I don't know why people would create a revocable trust then and not always create an irrevocable.
Okay, there's a few reasons. So in New York, for example, probate is horrible. So probate is the act of looking at the will in the official capacity. Probate means prove. Probate means we need somebody to give us a signature who can no longer give us a signature. So you own your house with Vlad, and God forbid he's hit by a car, he's in the hospital. If he dies and you're a joint owner of that house, husband and wife, it's your house, you can do what you want. He lives, but he can't sign a paper. He doesn't know who you are. If you have a power of attorney, we can get through that. If we don't have a power of attorney, we got a real problem. Now we take that house. By the way, if the house passes and it was in his name alone, How do you get that house? You got to look at his will. You got to see if it's named to you. And if it is, we file papers with the surrogate, and ultimately you get the house. Okay, you get a new deed that goes from Vlad, who's deceased, to you now. Okay.
And that's only if he had a will.
Well, that's if it's in his name and he had a will. If he didn't have a will, there's other ways we can do it. Now, let's take the same Vlad, the same, God forbid, accident, in the same house, but now we have a living trust, a revocable trust. And the house is in his share of that living trust, whether it's a solo trust or a joint trust with you. Let's just make it simple. Vlad has his own trust in his name, and the house is in his trust. God forbid if he's disabled, we look inside the trust. Who can act if he can't be the trustee? Oh, look, it's Jessica. Or he didn't like you, so it's your kids. But you're the power of attorney for him in my hypothetical, so you can act and do what you need to do regarding the house if it's not in the trust. There are ways around it, but we lose Vlad, and we don't need his signature. We look inside the trust and it says, oh, if we lose Vlad, it goes to Jessica. We didn't have to go look at the will for that. We skipped probate. Now, in New Jersey at present, probate is cheap and easy. But how about a few years ago, a couple of years ago, July 5th, 4th, 5th, where Christy was on the beach alone? You know, that big meme all over the place, him in the chair
Yeah.
breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what if on July 3rd or July 6th or whatever it is, we have a budget cut and the system's shut down and we need to probate Vlad's will, and the office is closed? You can't probate the will. You can't do what you need to do. What if you're a dentist, you have a dental office, you're the widow, and you've got patients who want to come in and you can't pay staff? Your office is shut down. That's what probate looks like when you can't get something probated. In New York, probate can take a good year. It's a bad year, actually. Florida can take 2 years and cost 7%. So in New Jersey, there's not a compelling reason to avoid probate, and there used to be, and there may still be some reasons not worth getting into now, but use a living trust, you're avoiding probate. Now, how do you make that work? If the house is in Vlad's name alone and Vlad has a living trust, that trust didn't control the house. We have to look at the will. The will says, put it in my trust. Then the trust says it goes to Jessica. So what do we do instead? While Vlad's alive, we take the house in his name and we put it into his trust. Now his will is a safety net that we're not using because the house is already in the trust. That's called funding. So the same thing would apply with brokerage accounts, banking, life insurance, things like that. Now, if we had a small amount of life insurance, you throw that into the living trust. If you have a large amount of life insurance and you want it out of his estate or asset protection, we do a new irrevocable life insurance trust, an ILIT, to get that insurance out of the estate and protect it. So there's different ways to skin the cat. So now you just heard about 2 irrevocable trusts, one for Medicaid purposes, one for life insurance, and the 2 look different. So on the life insurance, what if Vlad has $1 million policy that has 100,000 cash inside of it? What if you're the trustee? We can have what's called a SLAT, Spousal Lifetime Access Trust, where you could reach in and get the cash value. Vlad says, pull 50,000 out. I want to invest, or I want to go on a vacation or get a property. And you as the trustee say, okay, or nah. You could do that, and Vlad is cut off from that trust, even though the insurance is on his life. Right? So there's different ways to do it. I don't want to get too technical or into the weeds. Just trust me on this. Trust. There's revocable and irrevocable. Revocable, we will use for efficient wealth transfer. Generally, there needs to be a good number of shekels, depending upon circumstances, $1.5 million, 2 million, or up, and any complexity. I won't do the complexity with the will. I won't do a will if I think there's going to be family dynamics like fighting. When there's a will, we have to let family members and beneficiaries, or even disinherited ones, so heirs at law, know that somebody died. With the living trust, we don't have to let them know. And a living trust is harder to fight. A will is very easy to stop in its tracks, and I don't want to tell you and your viewers how to do it, but the living trust, it's a more complete system. And why won't everybody do it? Same reason that, you know, I had chocolate yesterday. People do stupid things. People don't want to know what's good for them. They, you know, they have to hit the low point and then they'll do something about it, as seen in Queen's Gambit, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, well, these are all like you made a good point. You made lots of good points and you put it into realistic scenarios. So if
I
someone
try.
needs to play this back to listen to it, in that level of detail, they should because this is really important. So um back to that other
In point
question.
five, I'm from Brooklyn.
What's that?
I'm from Brooklyn, so you got to slow it down a little, probably.
Right. So why again, like the cost of a will versus the cost of setting up a revocable trust versus an irrevocable trust? What are those costs and which do you think, if you were to prioritize, let's say power of attorney, a living will, a dead will or last will, and the two types of trusts, those five types of documents, how would you prioritize people getting on those if they were to act?
That was a tough one. So to begin with, we get a lot of calls for people who want a power of attorney. That's what we want, and we won't do that. It's a loaded gun. I don't want the liability, and we can draft those documents pretty easily. I mean, it's kind of, sorry folks, it's like word processor stuff. We see situations, we add a line or two to the power of attorney, and then for the next few years, that's in our form. We see something else, we'll add a line, take a line out. But these the powers of attorney are not completely custom documents. We're generally giving people as much power as possible, unless there's a compelling reason, like you're selling your house, you're going to be away that week, so you're giving a limited power of attorney for your attorney to actually sell your house. That's a limited power of attorney. We'll
And
do
that's
minor ones
restricted to
like
the
that.
house and that's restricted to a certain time frame. So you can set
Correct.
what scenario you want someone to have power.
Right. Now let's go on the converse. You come to us for planning, and how do I know how long this thing's going to have to last you? And I tell you, we should see each other every 3 years or major life changes. And 15 years later, you say, I'm thinking of updating my documents you did 15 years ago. Oh, you're dead. You're not here anymore. No, so whatever. So anyway, I try to make them as broad and as expansive, not expensive, but well, that's as expansive as possible because I'm having trouble predicting what we're going to need this for. And by the way, if I say the possibility to complete a Medicaid application for you, and you're, 25 years old, 22, so you'd say, hey, I'm not looking for Medicaid till I'm 65 or 70 or whatever. But you know what? I didn't get the number of that truck, and we don't know. And we can get Medicaid for young people who are disabled, injured. God forbid you have a stroke at your age. So all sorts of bad things do happen to good people and bad people. So we don't know. So we try to predict as much as possible. So I tell folks some of the value we bring is doing the most important thing you need at that time. So a beautiful power of attorney is completely useless if you're dead. And by the way, I have people tell me, I want to, I want you to do what I need you to do for my mother. I'm her executor. And I go, yeah, but she's alive. The will does nothing when you're alive. The power of attorney is the opposite. It doesn't work when you're dead. If you have a
Right.
heartbeat, it's a power of attorney. No heartbeat, it's your will. Okay, those two are opposites. So the most important thing is what you need when you need it. But
Okay.
I will say this, um, a will package on a single, we're generally 1450, and we're not getting complex in there. On a couple, we're 1750. Will, living will, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, privacy authorizations. That's a foundation for a simple estate plan. That's quality documents. That's what it is. It's more documents than legal advice. We go into trust format. Now we're spending time. We might spend an hour and a half, 2 hours going over 3 kids, $300,000. That sounds pretty easy. We already discussed there are complexities in there. There are some nuances like child, your oldest is 7. So how is your child going to get their money at what speed? By the way, did they get a car at 16? When did they start getting the bulk of their money? How did they? I mean, it's just all this stuff, not just 1/3. And what I'll see is real estate lawyers sell you through, they'll do a will package. And if you're lucky, they don't give it all at one time. They'll go, and they do it wrong. A 21, a third at 25, the balance at 30. First of all, if you're going to do it that way, it should be a third, a half, and the balance. Because otherwise, if you do the math, you'll see it's a third, a half, and then the balance. So anyway, I don't necessarily recommend as well. So
I think my
as far as
internet
a trust
connection is a
goes,
little wonky. Hold on one second.
could be me.
I think it's me.
This was good stuff. You're missing good stuff here.
I know.
I
Okay.
can't, I can't repeat it because I just made it up. Okay.
Okay,
So,
carry on.
so what's, so thank you. I carry on all over the place. So, what's most important to a family is what they need at that time. And part of the challenge is predicting what they're going to need, when they're going to need, what they have, what the law is going to be. You tell me all that and we can figure it out very easily. Tell me when you're going to, we'll just get you in here a week before. We'll take care of the documents. We'll charge you more and that'll be it. And we wouldn't have wasted the will that we did however many years ago because you haven't used it.
Right, right.
So,
And this
that's the
is all for
challenge.
a couple
So
of
yes,
$1,000s. So depending upon how simple and how complex, it is worth the investment, the upfront. And I'm not trying to sell you or sell your products by any means. I mean, people, if they want to, they can have the conversation or do some research and then, just start documenting all of these types of scenarios, even, on their own, just to lay it out. And in terms of the COVID and the whole pandemic, it might be best to even get a medical proxy or a healthcare, document going. Some of these are printable online. Not everyone might be able to go get professional, service. So I'm just trying to point people in directions of
right.
like any free services to start thinking about this or have the
Sure.
conversation. Some people don't even want to have the conversation with their spouse to start talking about,
I
well,
shared space with somebody. I shared space with somebody and she would put her hands over her ears and not talk about her parents' stuff. And her parents were clients and we had to skip her because she couldn't handle it. She
yeah.
just couldn't
So
handle it.
you got to put your big girl pants on and,
I
talk about
tried.
death. We're all dying. Basically, everyone is dying, some quick, some faster, some slower, but we all are on a timeline. We're not here to stay. And it is important to have the conversation. Now, when we were doing our will, we had to kind of have the conversation of who gets our kids, my parents, your parents, if one lives in Florida, we want to keep them in the school system. We wanted this, we wanted that. It can make for hostile conversation, or it could just make for, important conversation. So you kind of have to,
I used to say younger couples, I'd see them come into the office holding hands and leave fighting.
yes. And eventually they will come together. If not,
Yeah.
like they have to, because now they're like, well, if we don't do this, nobody gets the kids. I mean,
No, that's not true. The foster system will, but no decision is still a decision. It's a bad one. As far as your will goes, Uncle Murphy has a will for you. It's called intestacy, and it works something like this. First, it goes to whoever you see on Friday nights. And if you run out of those folks, it's whoever you see at Thanksgiving. If you run out of those folks, it's whoever you see at the family reunion. After that, we don't care. The problem is you have 3 kids and you're not talking to one of them, or one of them has special needs, or one of them's a real good gambler, and you would have given that child money throughout age 50, and at 19, that kid's getting it all. So it's not your estate plan, it's the government's.
yeah, it's not good. So it is better to, start now and start thinking about it now. And you laid out a lot of different scenarios and ways that this could work and
That's right.
not work.
Yeah. So this isn't fun stuff, and nobody wants to think about their mortality. My dad had a good attitude, so we'd gone over stuff for years, and ultimately I had to pull the plug on him, and I was with all the doctors. I wouldn't do it until he declined, and at that point, I couldn't get them to declare a hospice quick enough to pull the plug. So as long as he had a fighting chance, and I wouldn't do anything differently. But we'd spoken about it a number of times. I would talk to him about guardianships that I would handle, and he would say, without a quality of life, he didn't want to live that way. But the thing is, we had enough conversations. I knew exactly what he wanted and what he didn't want. And at one point, it looked like he was never going to have use of part of his body. He was going to have to learn to speak again. He was going into nursing. Like he wouldn't want that. So anyway, if you don't have the conversation, it's a disservice to both generations. The kids don't know what to do, and I used to joke that if the kids don't have the conversation with the parent, either bury them in the best coffin money can buy or the cheapest. My dad, he let me know what he wanted, but I would have gone to Costco. Let me spend that much on a coffin, so I would have asked for the cardboard boxes they come in. That might have been it. But all right, poor taste here. You can edit this out. But no,
Well,
my
no,
dad made it
we don't
clear what he
edit. This
wanted.
is
He
one take.
Yeah, well, maybe take it, but no, he left a list of what he wanted, and in fact, my dad prepaid his funeral, and he prepaid everything except, and he warned me to be a variance on the airfare getting him from Florida up here, and because I could have laid out my own money, I purposely did this, so that's part of my conversation on a living trust. With a living trust, the kids can write checks on the way to your funeral. And that's what I did. I used his living trust to pay the difference on the airfare. Could use my credit card, got miles or points. But with a will, you can't do that. You have to probate and with the living trust, you already have permission. So it's
Yeah,
just, it's,
that was very, you guys were very thought out, and your father was very, like, that's great. And I've talked about
he
that
was
with my
dutiful.
parents. What?
He was dutiful. He took it seriously, and he tried making
Yes.
it as easy as possible. By the way, I'm in the business. He had a living trust. It was almost funded. He did everything he could to make it as easy as possible. Bearing in mind, I have a hostile sister and this and that. And meanwhile, there were still issues that we had to deal with. And I'm in the business, and I had to make threats on the phone and this and that. Now imagine if he just left everything up in the air. And by the way, there weren't hundreds of millions of dollars here. It was a typical estate, but the fighting that happens, the cost is so much greater than legal or even financial. It's you don't want to see a family get broken up. So when I do the planning with families, I spend probably more time talking to them about their china and silver than about a mere bank account. $300,000 bank account, 3 kids, not much to talk about. But I mean, there is, but you have one engagement ring, who's getting that? And you have 3 kids. And how about dad's good watch, his everyday watch? How about the china, the silver, the knickknacks? That's
Should
where you see
people
the
write this
fights.
down? Should they
Yeah,
write this, write down every single asset and who you want it to go to?
we do something called the personal property memorandum, where we help make it easier. And I said Thanksgiving earlier. I do say thanks is the best time of the year for this. That's when you normally with the family, but since we don't want them to wait another 360 days or so, uh, you know, next time you're together or have a Zoom or whatever, it's not fun to talk about, but here's what I say. If you have siblings and you hear that your brother, your sister is getting the thing you wanted, and that's what mom or dad wanted, you're disappointed, but you'll deal with it. But if mom promised it to you and promised same thing to your sister, you'll beat each other's throats over this $50 Mickey Mouse watch that nobody even really cared about. But now it's about principle. Mom wanted me to have it. I can't believe you're doing that. And they would have taken this thing and thrown it out the window.
Right.
So
Yeah. We had that in my
harmony.
family, in my parents and like my grandparents, whatever. It was over a clown painting. I don't know, but that was like, so are you fighting fires every day? Are you getting phone calls from people who have, like, whether their trust has been executed or their will has been executed or they've been executed? Um,
We don't
in
do that here.
but in like these arguments back and forth, and are the documents that you've set up so airtight that you basically have a quick resolution to it, and it's like done is done?
Sometimes. And we try, I was a computer math major, so I try to be pretty intelligent on the drafting and on the distributions. And I'm not saying I was a computer hacker, but I look for ways to break the system so that someone else can't. And I don't really see that with my stuff. I do get calls. We got one last week. I love it. Somebody didn't want to use us. They found a guy who was cheaper. Guy's out of business. The thing got turned down. It was a Medicaid app, and now we have to fix it, and we'll charge them more because we got
Hmm.
more work to do. But we get calls. There was one family where the documents are fine. It's just of the 3 trustees, the siblings, one went rogue. Nothing I could have done about that, and now they're asking me for a litigation attorney, and I've stopped litigating. I find that it's not what I want to do. So I used to do estate litigation, not documents that I did. That would be a conflict of interest. But who's getting the house or this or that and the fighting. And I had one situation where the son had the money, the husband came into the mother's house where and she went into the hospital, and old world Italian, she would keep the jewelry under the mattress. Well, I'm not joking. And the son-in-law came, took the jewelry. So then the sister, the daughter had it, and the son has the money. The sister's facing foreclosure. They're in the bank, and it's like kids trading comic books. And I'm on speaker, and my adversarial cooperative attorney is on speaker. And there we are. I'm telling the son, put the check on the desk of the banker, back away. She's putting the watch on, the jewelry down, back away, and then they do the swap. And by
Yeah.
the way, in billable, that was like $1,000 between the two lawyers because
Yeah.
they couldn't get along. And you see stuff like this all the time. So
It is
going back,
hard though when emotions and tempers start to flare, for sure.
yep. So take them out of the equation as much as possible. Let the parents tell the kid, this is who's getting it. And when the parent says, mom says, I don't know who to, the golden rule, whoever has the gold makes the rules. Better they're mad at mom than at each other. And if you have to, you blame it on the lawyer. I say I have broad shoulders, I can handle it. It's really more of a bigger belly than shoulders. But yeah,
One
make it
thing to
clear.
do is give away your stuff while you're still alive, so people don't
Yep.
have to fight over it. So if there's an engagement ring that's deep in the safe deposit box, take it out and give it to one of your kids in front of the other one and say,
let the others know.
yeah, here's what I'm doing. Here's what you get. Here's what they get. And I'm happy to see it go. And then, if you have any questions, you can come to me directly because I'm still alive. Speaking of being still alive,
We still are. I hope.
we are. The concept of being able to euthanize another human being, like to be able to pull the plug, to Kevorkian, to whatever you want to call it,
I'm
is that
losing you, so I'm going to ask you to repeat that.
okay? Do we
The
have a
internet.
bad connection still?
I see you've got a full connection, but
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, we'll try it again.
Okay. So when
You
it
sound good.
comes, yes, good. Okay. When it comes to being able to, I know it's not called euthanize because that's what you do when you put dogs to sleep, but Dr. Kevorkian would come in and,
Yeah.
like hospice kind of does it sort of, to be able to put to rest a person who is not having a good quality of life. Is that something legal that we're allowed to do in New Jersey yet?
Last year, I think it was December, a statute passed and I was speaking about it, and I haven't looked at it in about a year, so I don't remember it. But there were a lot of rules and it was ugly. And it was like somebody had to be really terminal and they had to wait 120 days. And like, if you're suffering, you just added another 4 months. So it was like a really watered down, weak statute, but there was a little something there, right to die. It wasn't too good. So I had a family that kind of summed it up, and this wasn't me. They said it. The wife was keeping the husband home. He was in pretty bad shape, wandering, dementia, kind of didn't know who he was. And as he progressed and got worse, she finally agreed he can go in a facility. And she said if he gets COVID, it wouldn't be so bad anymore. So it's quality of life issues. So
Okay.
she really went above and beyond. So it got to the point where she reached her limit. And my experience has been when somebody's at home, they reach the limit when there's incontinence. So
Okay. My
whatever that's
question
worth.
about that was more along the lines of if there are siblings or if someone has power of attorney or if someone is your medical proxy, have you laid out enough guidelines in place to prevent someone from saying, listen, we don't have enough money to take care of dad and he doesn't have enough money to take care of himself in a nursing home. We just want to end it, let's pull the plug or let's be done with it because it makes better financial sense. Or I want to get a hold of my inheritance already and not have it be for my sister, so
Right.
have you come across people who have intentions such as that? And how do you prevent that from
A
happening?
little bit, but you got to overreact to do it. You are pull the plug. You're not to push the. So as far as pulling the plug goes, our living wills, or otherwise known as an advance directive, say if I'm a terminal vegetative state, permanent terminal vegetative brain dead state, or so terminally ill, keeping me alive is prolonging my suffering, I don't want to live that way. So if my dad in '99 was on in an induced coma for about 2 to 3 weeks to let his cardiac surgery heal. He had brain activity, but they knocked him out. That's not a living will. That's a guy who's just being knocked out and they had a hard time getting the tubes out, but they did. Contrast that to somebody, you get into a fight with your husband, he leaves to go to the airport, this happened to a woman, hit by a bus at the airport. You think on the airport you're going to die from a plane, hit by a bus, and he pretty much died that day. But imagine he didn't. So let's say his brain got crushed. and there's no brain activity. The machines are keeping him alive, but he's never going to be able to speak or talk or anything. That's defined on the documents. But if there's no meaningful activity and no chance, me personally, let me go. And I have a 3-day delay on mine. So wait 3 days and then pull the plug on me. Now, the other thing would be, what if you're, God forbid, stage 4 cancer, you're in such tremendous pain, and so they're just sedating you and knocking you out. All they're doing is keeping you alive and torturing you. And with my wife's father, we used to use the term mutchering. It's like,
Mhm.
what part are they cutting out of him next, right? They're torturing the man. On the other hand, my dad, they knocked him out. A couple of weeks later, he was able to get out of there. That's different. So that's not pull the plug. So if you have somebody where, there's not enough money for the nursing home, congratulations. That's like 80% of my client base. So you can't say the nursing home is going to be $100,000. We don't want to pay it. Kill the man. Not allowed. And probably not fitting the criteria. Now, on the other hand, that same person is in the hospital on life support. Medicare is covering it anyway. Okay,
Mhm.
so don't think of it as the expense as much that way. But, grandma said she never wanted to go in a nursing home. And I had a mentor who said there are some promises you can't keep. So if it's unsafe for you to keep them home, they got to leave. Adult Protective Services will come in and pull them right out.
Mhm.
So it depends. If you have a safe environment, someone can stay home and get tremendous help. If you have an unsafe environment, they can't stay there. And where are they going to go if they're not there? They'll go to hospital for observation. Then they're going to go into rehab if appropriate. And you got to find long-term care housing for them. And if they don't have anybody, the Office of Public Guardian will step in and then make decisions. If
Mhm.
there's any money, the state will take it. If there's no money, then there's no money.
Got it.
Depressing, right?
Yeah, interesting. Well, you know what? Let's switch gears for 1 second if you have just a little bit more time, because I
For
don't
you,
know.
sure.
Okay. So let's see. Right before we had our elections, and I don't know if you know this, but there's a new president that's going to be coming in shortly.
Yeah, now's a good time to talk about pulling the plug. All right, keep going.
Oh, okay. Some people were taking a look at their entire, financial investments and wondering if they should sell off. If not, is Biden going to be issuing the rich person's tax? Are they going to be, what should we do? So did you find, or did you advise people to make any particular moves in light of the new presidency coming in? And I hope that none of this applies to me, because I'm not a rich folk. So none of that stuff above the $400,000 level or whatever applied to me. But
Hold on to your parachute.
yeah,
So just today,
I'm sure
I,
I'll
I
get
had a
hit
conversation
somehow,
with
some
the
way. But yeah.
family, and I will give you the exact scenario because I think it's worth talking about. So, and I referenced this family earlier, but mom's been in a facility, and there's an IRA, and let's say it's 50 grand, okay? And to get Medicaid, I need her down to $2,000. Okay, and there's different ways to do it. And unless she has 48,000 in expenses, and by the way, aside from the IRA, there's other money. Okay, so it's $200,000, 50 is the IRA, 150 is other stuff. And if I'm going to apply for Medicaid in March, which we are, unless she dies first or if I die first, but provided everything goes the way it's supposed to, we're going to apply for Medicaid in March. That means between now and then, I have to get rid of $200,000. And I'm not interested in the 150. I'm only interested in the 50 of the IRA. And as we may know, every dollar out of an IRA is ordinary income. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Right. So this year, they had some medical expenses. They're entitled to some medical deductions off their income tax. So the question is, do we take the 50,000 from the IRA this year? And by the way, for 2020, doesn't matter if you take from 50,000 from an IRA January 2nd, December 31st, equally through the months, doesn't matter. If we don't take it this year, they're going to have to take it next year before March. And what if, by the way, she dies in April? They will have taken 50,000 in the IRA, and the taxes will be pushed into next year. Okay. This year, I feel they'll get a write-off. This year, I also know what the tax rates are. Next year, I have no idea. And I used to say a couple of months ago, if Trump makes it back, then with the $3 trillion stimulus, plus possibly more, I would not be surprised if taxes went up, even with Trump. Democrats in there, I'm pretty confident they're going up. Okay, so rich people, not rich people, Democrats generally, they'll generally raise taxes. So I think next year will be a greater tax hit on the same family. I don't know if we're going to have more stimulus. I don't know if we're going to have new taxes. The other thing is the Trump tax regime was due to expire December 31st, 2025 anyway. So we had this with Reagan, we had it with Bush. So EGTRA and TRA and all that other stuff, unless they get a supermajority in Congress, which they really can't get, they didn't have it with Reagan, and Trump's administration was very similar. They couldn't do it then either. They can only go for tax legislation that affects the budget over a 10-year span. So it was going to expire December 31st, 2025, and probably go up. So I think taxes are going up. Oh, as far as Wall Street goes, Wall Street typically does the opposite of what I expect. So if I'm driving with you and I tell you to turn left, you probably should turn right. And if I tell you to go sell, you should hold on to it.
Yeah.
So
So you've
companies
really
make
played
no
the
sense.
market well, I could tell.
Yeah, well, that's why I have training where you don't guess the market. So instead, we take a long approach and we will reallocate into asset classes, but you can't time the market. So you are gambling with the market if you do any of these three things: stock picking, market timing, track record investing. Okay. I think Apple is good. I'm going to buy some Apple. Apple could do great. Apple could tank. Market timing. I think now's the time to get in. Maybe you do great. Maybe you can't. You can't time the market repeatedly. You can get lucky, but and a track record investing. Apple was good before. They'll be good again. No. I was in a class with 100 folks. They gave us each a quarter. I got lucky. I got 2 quarters, and they had us stand up and flip the quarter. And if it was heads, you stayed standing up. And if it was tails, you sat down. I got lucky. It was tails. I got to sit down and keep the 2 quarters. And one flipped it 16 times, and normally like 11 times. So 16 heads, and then he down. And what that's showing you is how the coin did the time before has really on what the next flip is going to be. Apple could go up, Apple could go down. Tesla was out of trouble for a while. Now keeping new highs. You just don't. And by the way, Tesla's doing great. And then what happens if there's a battery supply issue, or if self-driving car kills somebody else, or the battery, or what happens with the iPad if they cause or eye problems? Just crazy things happen. So you go with the fundamentals. Now, my biggest issue with Wall Street of late is that it's all emotional. So you think about January, February, think of the Freehold Mall stores that were closing down. That had nothing to do with COVID. JCPenney didn't close because of COVID. Sears didn't close because of COVID. It closed because of a changing environment. And you go to the mall now, and like Lord & Taylor's going out, Nordstrom's and this and that. The stores are going out, and that has nothing to do with COVID. But then you hear about a vaccine, everyone's happy, the market goes up. The problem with the vaccine, the market goes down. And that has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the companies. So I think we're looking at the emperor's clothes. I think the market's been overinflated for years, even Trump and before. And I keep waiting for the shoe to drop. However, I'm still in the market. And if I pull out waiting for the shoe to drop, I'm never on board that train, and I'm losing it on dividends and the other stuff. And I'll stop in a second, my little rant. Studies have shown going in the market and riding it down and back up, you generally do better than if you pulled out and waited for the market to correct. And by the way, when is the market at its high? When is it at its low? I mean, it was at a high last week, but when it went to, was it going to continue or was it going to drop? And when the market goes to the low, how do you know you're at the bottom? Hindsight, but you think it's going to continue to up, and it goes up. And if you were short selling, you'd build. So at the time market, do well, maybe you'd be better off in Atlantic City. That was it.
Well, I'm
Still
big
wait.
on dollar cost averaging. So
Yep. Yeah.
wow, our internet connection really
That's
sucks
the way
right
you
now.
to take today. So I had somebody where we were bringing 2 million in, and it was during Brexit. And I called my back off. I said, listen, I know you wanted CA over 6 months. I think I'd like to accelerate it over 3 months because the market's so depressed now. And I didn't know if Greece was going to fall also, if the market was going to tank more and dollars would buy more, if it would go up. And it turns out it did go up a little bit. So by accelerating it, we got in on a little bit of a low, but that was as close to timing the market as I wanted to get, because you just don't know. And by the way, there's always catastrophic events. Oh, there's the
Right.
war. Now there's COVID, a pandemic. What's it going to be in 5 years? No, there's always something. And there was SARS and H1N1 and all this other stuff out there. There's is a very efficient distiller of information. So whatever you read from Kramer or Motley Fool or any of these other things, already been you get there. So just
Yeah.
keep that in mind. You're not getting ahead of the game. You may get some lucky guesses, but be careful out there.
Yeah. Kramer is the hardest working man I've ever seen. It looks like he works 24/7. But you know what? With financial investments, is there something that people should do or people should know? Do you, if you die and you need to transfer your financial investment or your stock portfolio to someone else, do you have to sell in order to transfer it to someone else?
So you mean there was stocks in the estate and then the person died?
Uh, yeah,
Is
you
that your
can.
question?
Yes, you have a
So
portfolio and you're dead now.
you may be asking the question differently, or I don't want to say wrong, but I can't resist. I'll ADD on you, and then you're going to hang up on me. So the pig, I asked this one at least 3 times a week, and I'll sum it up. The pig asked the chicken, "Why does everybody like you more than it says? I give people breakfast." And the pig, "Well, I give them breakfast too. I do it. I really mean business." And the chicken goes, "Yes, but I did it when I was alive." So the question I am rewording for you is, should you give the stocks to you when you're alive or when you're gone? And my answer to you is, they'll get better tax treatment when you're okay. However, the joy of giving it to them when you're alive, or they can use it when you're alive. You can leave your stock portfolio to the kids. They can keep it intact. They can sell it. They can do what they want. If cost basis is relevant. So if you paid 50,000, let's make it 30. You paid 30 years ago, and your portfolio is worth 100,000. There's 70,000 of profit. And if you sell all 100,000, you're going to pay tax only on the profit, 70,000. That's not your tax. You pay tax on it. If you give it to the kids and you paid 30,000, it's like they paid 30,000, and they go and sell, and they're going to have the profit. On the other hand, if you leave it to the kids, you paid 30, but it's worth 100. They get it at 100, they sell it for 100, and they pay no tax. Okay, so you don't want to sell right before death, unless we're doing it because we're going in a nursing home, we got to move stuff around, so some of that comes up. So some people will say, sell the stuff, I don't care about the tax, I want them to have it. And I will try to talk people into holding off from that, and we can use a trust to try to minimize taxes as well. So that's another reason to use a trust, the separation. So I don't want to bog it down, but to answer your question finally, you can leave your stock directly to the kids. They don't have to sell it, or they can sell it.
Got it.
They have options.
Clear as mud. Clear as mud.
That's roll. If you wouldn't me. What else you got? You got anything else, or did I wear you out?
My head's gonna explode. I think I need to make another appointment with you.
Sure.
It's been a while since we've seen you, and my son is 20, and we keep telling him that if anything happens to us, he gets his sister, who's 17.
Okay.
So
You guys, and only half you can make him guardian of his sister, which would be for only 1 year or less, and then she's 18 and the guardianship is over.
yeah.
Okay, so people don't know what to do. If the kids were 10 and 6, all right, now you got to make guardian decisions. When you have an 18, 19-year-old, you don't want to saddle them with their sibling, but for 6 months or so, you can make it happen and so forth. So there are ways to work it.
That's true. She's pretty independent, though. I think she'd be fine with the dogs. We just won't tell anyone that we're dead for a little while.
Yeah, I saw that in Party of 5, I think.
Yeah, right? Boy, I should rewatch that show. That was a good show.
Yeah.
All righty. I'm going to actually, I'm going to have to digest all of this and replay this whole thing for Vlad. So we have what to talk about at dinner tonight.
Sure. Or right before bed if you haven't. And hopefully this isn't your worst watched one yet.
Oh my God, this is great. This is great. I'm definitely going to have people this podcast comes with a free pen and paper, because they're going to have to take notes. This was very informative.
I agree with the warning.
I do appreciate you breaking it down into, tangible examples, like something that we can grab
Nah,
hold to that are relevant.
you were a great host, so I hope I didn't go too ADD on you,
No,
running
you're
amok.
perfect. You're just enough ADD.
You're not so bad yourself. Thanks, Jess. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Be well.
You too.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.